Hi, everyone, and welcome to the webinar today. Thank you all so much for joining us. We have a really great event planned, and I cannot wait to dive in with everybody. Before I do, I just wanted to give a caveat and ask for some forgiveness. My Wi-Fi is being a little sketch today, so hopefully everybody can relate to that. And if you lose me for just a second, I'll be back, hopefully. All right, so for everyone who has already joined, we are going to go ahead and get started in just a second. I wanted to give a little bit of room for people to be able to hop on. If you're like me, you're probably on calls back to back all day. So we know there are folks who are finishing up calls right now. As more people to continue to join in, I do want to make sure that everyone knows how to use the GoToWebinar question box. This is a feature within the GoToWebinar panel. That question box feature is essentially going to be your chat feature for the day. So you won't be able to chat with other attendees in a traditional sense, but I'll be able to see all of your responses, and it will be like your chat feature to be able to get me into any questions or sort of let me know what you're thinking. So to get us all started and acquainted with the question box, I'd love for you to type into that question box, say hey, let everyone know where you're calling in from today. That is probably one of my favorite things about these webinars is that they connect people from all over the world, all over the country, and we're all here from all these different types of industries just trying to do one thing, and that's to improve our marketing. So find that question box, let me know where you're calling in from today, and I'll call out some of those responses. So for anyone who can maybe hear my accent, I'm calling in from Louisiana. I'm based out of North Louisiana, closer to Texas than I am to anywhere else. I was born and raised here. So let's see where you're calling in from today. All right, tons of folks who are typing in right now. All right, I see another Texas person. I see Florida, Wisconsin, Virginia, Colorado. We've got a good group here today. Arizona, a couple of Arizonas. Miami, Georgia. Good to see everyone. Dallas, I'm pretty close to you. Florida, some more Florida, Ohio, Quebec. We love having our Canadian friends on. I see someone else from Louisiana. Welcome. We're having beautiful weather here today for the first time in a few days, so we're really excited about that. Okay, awesome. I see everybody still typing in. I love it. Thank you so much. I'd love to call out everybody, but if you haven't noticed, we've got a ton of people and you guys are from everywhere. So that's really exciting. Again, because we're all here for that one common goal to show up for our marketing. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, a couple of housekeeping notes before we dive in. This webinar will be recorded. We get that question all the time. So you don't really need to take any notes. You can just sort of sit back and enjoy. This recording is going to be uploaded to LocalIQ and WordStream YouTube channels. So if you want to run it back, all of the materials are going to be emailed straight to your inbox. And then lastly, don't forget to engage that question box with all of your questions. All right. So we will have all of these slides that are going to be sent to you later on today after the webinar, along with the recording. You'll just go to YouTube. If you don't get those in your inbox, type in LocalIQ or WordStream. You'll click on one of our channels and you'll be able to see all of our past webinar recordings there. So if you want to catch up on any of our old ones or view this webinar recording again, you can find it all there later on. Also, the reason why I have you all practice using that question box is I want you to feel really comfortable typing your questions in there throughout the webinar, because at the end is when we'll have our live Q&A session. And if you've attended any of our webinars in the past, you know our Q&A sessions are a lot of fun. It's a very unique experience. So be sure to have your questions ready and throw them into that box. So some folks have attended our webinars in the past, and some of you may already be working with us at LocalIQ. And so you're just here for more continuing education, or maybe you're here and you're familiar with us through our thought leadership brand, WordStream. No matter how you got to us, we want to welcome you and help everyone get on the same page about who LocalIQ is. So to put it simply, LocalIQ is how businesses like yours attract and retain the ideal customers. We do it through a digital platform that's supporting vertical data from over 2.5 million campaigns. Our marketing experts take a personalized approach and truly know each of your industries, getting what's right for you. Then we get you a step ahead through AI-powered lead management for faster follow-up and conversion. One more thing we're really proud of is that we are a trusted premier partner for all the major advertising platforms. We are recognized for our commitment to driving innovation in marketing and growth for our customers. And each of those badges down at the bottom and awards represents every major publisher and recognition from industry peers. And it isn't just something that's granted to any marketing platform out there. It's really only given to businesses that display clear campaign success for their customers, display thought leadership within the field, and then meet a rigorous set of requirements for each of those platforms. Speaking of platforms, let me tell you a little bit about LocaliQ's platform so that you'll have an understanding when we talk about some of these solutions. So at our heart, we have a suite of lead generation solutions. And then we combine that with Dash by LocaliQ, which is AI that helps you convert those leads. And then they all feed into each other within this platform that can then inform all of your other marketing and all of your other campaigns. So if I refer to that throughout the webinar or maybe give an example about some of our solutions, that's just a little bit about what I'm talking about. All right, so now that we know who LocaliQ is, let me tell you a little bit about me. I am your webinar host and facilitator for the day. My name is Katie. Here at LocaliQ, I work closely with our teams on our own digital marketing. And for the last 10 plus years, I've worked in one capacity or another, equipping sales teams, agencies, and individual business owners with whatever they need to succeed. And again, if you couldn't tell by the accent, I'm located in the southern US in Louisiana. I always tell people though that I'm not in the fun part of Louisiana. I'm about 5 hours north of New Orleans. All right, so where can you learn more about the topics that we're going to cover here today? This is going to fly by. This is an hour's worth of content. I talk quickly. It's going to go by fast. So if you ever feel like you need more time to sit with any of the topics that we cover today, or any of the topics that we cover in our webinars, I highly recommend you navigate to LocaliQ or our WordStream website. We cover everything in these webinars in depth over there, as well as on social media. So be sure to follow us. We share out notifications for future events. So if you want to join more webinars like this in the future, definitely be sure to follow us and then turn on your post notifications. We also share out platform updates, interesting articles, and all sorts of things that advertisers or business owners should be aware of. We do that on Instagram, Facebook, X, and YouTube. All right, drum roll. Let's get started. If you attended any of our webinars in the past, you know I love to keep listeners on their toes. So let's go ahead and get warmed up to our topic for the day. So find that question box. I'm going to hit you with a quick pop quiz. I want you to type into the question box, let me know what's been a really successful lead generation tactic that you've tried for your business in the past. Now, is it a specific ad channel? Is it something like search or social? Does Facebook do really well for you? Or maybe it's more specific, like there's a special promotion that you run once a year because your customers really love it and you find that you get great leads from it. Or is there a referral program that's a really great lead generator for you? So those are the kinds of things. Let me know what has worked for you in the past or something that you're interested in trying. What's something that you've done in the past that really moved the needle for you to bring in new business? So I'm going to look over at the question box and let's call out some of these responses here. So I see Yelp. I love that. Facebook Boost, magazine reader service cards. That one's good. Offering a free item, coupons. Everyone loves a good coupon. Google Ads, just search. A lot of businesses do really well with just search. They get all the leads that they need there. Targeted event with direct mail and email support. That combination is really, really impactful for a lot of businesses. LinkedIn, paid referral programs, webinars. Hey, I understand that. Ongoing promotions, just for visibility. Yeah, that's a really good way to keep people interested, keep your brand in front of people. We do special promotions and it works really, really well for our customers. I see a ton of other answers. I see more Facebook, some Google display ads. I love it. All right, so I wish that I could call out everybody. You probably noticed that there are a few of the same answers, but most everybody had some sort of slightly different response or maybe a reason why they used what they used. And that's because each business, each platform, each tactic is going to be different because it has to be based on whatever your unique needs are. So whether we are going to be able to dive into all of these psychology principles and you'll be able to take every single tactic, it really just depends on your business, but you'll be able to walk away with a much better idea of how to take something that appeals for all people and tweak it to be able to get in more leads for you. So let's go ahead and let's get started. So we're going to start at the top. Why use marketing psychology? We're going to go over a little bit of those principles, how to use it, and then we're going to get into 7 psychology tactics that you can use today in your marketing that are going to make a difference. All right, so why use marketing psychology? A lot of times we're doing it and we don't even know it. So we deal with a barrage of noise that surrounds us every single day. There's a ton of information that we have to take in, but there's only a portion of it that you need in that moment to actually make a decision. So you're only going to take in what is the most recent, what's the most frequent, or what is the most extreme in order to make whatever information, whatever decision it is that you need to make in that moment. And then if you're anything like me, you make that decision and you probably move on with life and forget you ever made the decision or the purchase to begin with. So you're not alone. Your brain has to rely on these shortcuts. It helps you remember, it helps with problem solving, and then what's really important for us today, it helps with decision making, which is key in marketing and then running a business. So these shortcuts are what psychology, or where psychology is going to come into play, and that's going to help you understand, predict, and really leverage these tactics to be able to lean into your consumers' behaviors for your favor. So don't worry, we're not looking to manipulate your prospects or your customers, but there are ways that we can influence their actions and really help you stand out from all of that noise. So first up is perceived value. Our brains are wired to make choices on these emotional triggers that are baked into perceived value. So it's where a customer's view or appraisal of a product or service is based mostly on their perception of its costs and benefits. Things like if it meets or will meet their needs and expectations, how it compares to a competitor, and then its quality. We know our brains are wired to make choices based on these emotional triggers. That's part of the shortcuts that we just talked about. And so those choices include purchasing decisions. So rather than considering something like a manufacturing cost when assessing whether a product or service is worth the price, consumers are going to rely on subjective judgments and emotions, things like loyalty, confidence, anger, fear, curiosity, all to determine results, how they feel about the product or service, and then how they're then going to perceive those results. So there are several ways to use psychology in marketing. I'm sure all of us have had experience with this concept of color and psychology and the emotional triggers that color can bring to people. So there's a couple of quick examples that include things like advertising and color placement and where you use that. And so you can do that to resonate with your audience by using these words and these different triggers within color. So if you apply psychology principles to copywriting, or maybe, like I said, you're choosing a color for your website or your ad. So like this example on the screen, this is just a fun example of a Lego ad. It shows Darth Vader, he's grilling, he's in the sun, hanging out. It's a playful scene with these Star Wars figures, and then you're dropping them into this really casual, fun atmosphere to make a new story. So that's why that orange and that yellow background is perfect. It's open, it's inviting, and you can see it points to all of those positive emotions, which is what they want to convey through that ad. All right, so before we get into applying the specifics, let's just make sure that we all understand how to responsibly use marketing psychology. Remember, we don't want to manipulate people, but we do want to be able to influence their decisions if their goals align with our products and our services. So you do want to make sure that their decision to choose you is truly the best one for them. You don't want to use these tactics to make promises that you can't keep. So you're not going to want to overpromise and underdeliver because you're going to end up turning the customer anyway. And then you do want to make sure you align your business goals with the goals of that prospective buyer. That makes it a win-win, and that's how you get long-term loyalty. And then you're a human and a consumer too. So if something feels a little icky when you're doing it, follow your gut. All right, so 7 ways that we can apply marketing, that we can apply psychology in marketing. The first tactic is something that we can all relate to. Its formal name is the commitment and consistency bias. But what it means in layman's terms is that we usually continue to do what we've been doing. Given the opportunity, our brains are going to take that mental shortcut and avoid what we might consider the agony of choice. We like to keep things very simple. So if someone makes a single decision at one point in time, they will regularly go with that same choice again and again, just for simplicity's sake. Remember, think back to all of that noise that we have to take in all day and try to make decisions through. So this plays out in marketing in a few different ways. The biggest one being the use of the marketing funnel. So you're helping the consumer make one decision at a time through your ads or your content, and this can encourage them down the funnel to eventually purchase from you. Here you can see examples that represent each part of that consumer journey. You see an educational video at the very top of the funnel. They might click on Shop Now to peruse items, or maybe they just want to learn more, but they're not necessarily going to take any action. So the next up, you see a post from Starbucks, and that's inviting a user to comment with their favorite drink. The prospect is making a decision to engage with the brand, which will make future decisions a lot more likely. Then finally, in the convert stage, you see an example of a free offer. So at this point, the consumer has likely made several decisions to engage at a variety of levels with your brand, and so the next step makes sense for them. So that's just one quick example. So if we take a continued look at commitment and consistency bias, this is how the tactic plays out in real life marketing for everyday businesses. So maybe this copywriter is a psychology grad because the call to action button on the pet ad is brilliant. It is using this principle to speak directly to the audience's self-perception. If someone is on that website, it's because they care about their pet and they already have made the decision to be the best pet parent that they can be. So using this pop-up, using that button in that copywriting, there's no way that they wouldn't click it because that would make it inconsistent with their self-perception. Next up is the anchoring bias. This is the tendency of an individual to use the first piece of information presented to them as a benchmark or an anchor for making a subsequent decision. So we all know this one. It's similar to the previous principle, but this one is particularly useful for pricing because it affects our perception of value. So remember earlier we talked about emotional triggers and the perception and how that weighs much heavier in decision making. So by setting a higher initial price and offering a discount or a promotion, businesses can create the perception of value and attract customers who may be more inclined to make a purchase based on that initial anchor. However, it's important that you strike a balance between that initial price, that it appears credible, and that the discounted price still generates a profit. So pricing is a whole science unto itself. So being transparent and genuine in your pricing practices is going to be really important. And then what that balance is going to be very specific to each of your businesses. So another fun example of this, just to prove a point, is found by Rolls-Royce. So they stopped exhibiting at car shows and instead started exhibiting at aircraft shows. Why? Because, comparatively speaking, a new Rolls-Royce is a steal next to the thought of purchasing a private jet. Now, this is an exaggerated example, but it drives the point home. So for all of us normals who aren't out there shopping for private jets or a new Rolls Royce, we can look at techniques like indicating markdowns, showing the amount that was saved, or displaying multiple pricing options. This is also called comparative pricing. So not only does the buyer see this as a bargain, but also a higher starting price tends to send the message that the item is of a higher value. So notice how I said tends. This is when we get back to that science of pricing. Every business has a unique audience with a very unique perception of price. So you have to make sure that you understand how that pricing change is going to affect the perceived quality of your product, but then also what that return on investment is going to get for you. So another great use of this tactic is to show the amount saved. Many software or subscription companies will do this. I'm sure we've all seen it, showing the savings of an annual plan maybe versus that of a monthly plan. So this encourages the consumer to go with the more immediate upfront pricing option. I've seen it a lot recently in my own membership shopping. My apps love to tell me that I just saved $5 on my crazy expensive grocery trip. So even though I spent a ton more, it still feels great to see that savings and then encourages me to go back. Same concept. Next up is something called the paradox of choice. This says that as the number of options to choose from increases, the more stressed we feel about making a decision and the more likely we are to just not make one at all. Plus, we're probably likely to have doubts about whether the decision that we did make was the right one. So we want to make it as simple as possible for people. Let's take a look at what this looks like for your business and lead generation, and then ways to limit the type of decision fatigue that can come from something like this. So the most obvious answer is to keep varieties and options to a minimum. In a really classic consumer experiment, you've probably seen it before, when a supermarket made 6 types of jam available for tasting, it attracted 40% of shoppers, 30% of whom bought jam. But when this was repeated with 24 types, it attracted 60% of shoppers and resulted in only 3% of purchases. So if you wanted to increase your conversion rates, consider decreasing the options available to your audience. Just because you're casting a wider net doesn't mean that you're going to convert every single one of those people. That's what this is talking to. So when you're offering a sale, maybe you do it on a select number of products, or you just reduce the number of items down to just maybe 5 or 2 pricing packages based on whatever your business or your industry is. Anything to make that decision a lot easier for people. And then if you're not in the business of selling jam, an application maybe a little closer to home would be to limit the number of items in your main navigation menu on your website. So while a big part of marketing is going against the norm so you can stand out, that doesn't necessarily always apply. So for example, you might see that a competitor has 5 items in their website's navigation bar. And maybe you think that you need to have 10 in yours so that prospects can see that you have so much more to offer. The truth is, websites should really only have 3 to 6 items in their navigation bar because of the paradox of choice. Too many options to choose from, and the visitor becomes confused on what to do, where to go. They may even just abandon the site entirely. So by narrowing down those menu options, and even the other click options on the homepage, which we'll talk about again in just a little bit, you spare them from all these unnecessary decisions. So they then have the mental energy to make the more important ones as they go deeper into your site. So here we have an example of an allergist site with 2 rows worth of menu decisions up at the top versus the second one, which is a site template from one of our own Local IQ sites. And it is a consolidated version of a menu, and they're utilizing likely drop downs so that you're not giving up any information. You're just making it easier for people to make the decision to go deeper into the site. So similar to websites, let's focus on landing pages specifically. So the reason I wanted to hone in on just landing pages is because of how important they are for your digital campaigns and then ultimately your conversions. So we've said it 1,000 times on these webinars, but it's worth repeating. When running a campaign, you should have one unique landing page for each product or offering. And the name of the game is to reduce distractions as much as possible. So maybe you've removed the email sign up button from the page where you want users to buy now, but there are other options on the page. Maybe they're just more choices to frustrate users and they're just less prominent, so you don't see them immediately. Is there a link heavy footer on the bottom? What about social media icons that link to your profiles or allow the visitor to share? These are all great tactics, but they have their place and it's not on a campaign landing page. You really want to narrow down the focus of the user, like in this case study here for this registry site. They were able to increase conversion rate by 100% simply by eliminating the navigation menu. It's a very small, subtle change, but you can see the difference in how clean and easy it is and where your eye focuses on each of those examples. And then our last pro tip to combat distraction and consumer fatigue is to have only one clear call to action per landing page. Multiple options are going to distract your prospects from the desired action that you want them to take. So it's going to make for a less cohesive user experience and can really lead to a loss in conversions. We talked about people just getting frustrated, throwing up their hands, moving on. So when you're running paid ads, you can't afford to waste your ad spend. So if you're experiencing maybe decision fatigue right now, because there's a lot of things to consider when you're building a page or building a website, there's just a lot of decisions to make. That's when working with a partner, finding a template, something like that is where it's going to be really, really helpful. Like this example here on this slide, LocalIQ has a menu of templated websites and landing pages that can be customized, but they're all built for conversion. So you see the one call to action, you see the simplified navigation, you see the form front and center. Those are all things to consider when you are getting a landing page ready for a campaign. Next up is a piece of psychology that I think we can all relate to at some level: social proof. This says that we tend to follow others in new situations where maybe appropriate behavior is unknown to us. It's our way of ensuring that we feel safe and liked and accepted. We know what this means in high school, but what does it mean for marketing? It means testimonials, reviews. It's other people vouching for you, speaking positively about their experience with your product and service, and then ultimately giving you a recommendation for others to use you too. So while reviews can seem like something that's really difficult to collect, maybe it's daunting on how to utilize them, they don't have to be. So one easy thing you can do to give your reviews more prominence is to give them a dedicated testimonials page that's clean and organized. So this allows prospects to see others who are just like them. Like in this example from our own case studies pages, you can filter out by different verticals. So you can find businesses that are just like you and who have benefited from a product or a service. And then depending on your industry, you can either expand on the testimonials and feature awards or other distinctions that really help establish trust with prospects. But don't feel like you have to keep all those great reviews relegated to just one page on your site. Feel free to adorn your website with your testimonials so that at every turn, your prospects can see how you've made a positive impact on others just like them. So as they're searching your site, they're learning more about you, they're learning more about your products, they're also seeing that social proof. So include them on your landing pages and homepage too. Including the reviewer's name, title, and headshot adds additional credibility, along with any other stamps of approval. So if you have, like I said, partnerships, awards, or other what we like to call trust signals that speak to your credibility, create some space for those. And if you're in an industry where trust is really significant, like healthcare or any business where you're collecting someone's data, it might make sense to feature a page dedicated specifically to establishing trust. Here's where you would feature certifications, badges, awards, signs of security, or any other trust signals. And then don't forget about using testimonials in your ads too. Client quotes make for really compelling ad copy. And in the example here, the copy is the creative for the ad, so it makes it a lot simpler to execute. Next up is something called the reciprocity effect. This is the concept that people feel obligated to return a favor or a benefit that they've received. This includes things like free samples, free trials, discounts that are offered to new customers. They're all designed to make potential buyers feel obliged to reciprocate with a purchase. So another way that this plays out in real life is to offer exceptional customer service. So it's important to proactively ask for reviews. We talked about that just a little while ago. But if you focus on providing an awesome experience, for example, you can bet that you'll organically collect those reviews. So even though it's maybe your job to serve them well and their job to pay you, the extra effort you make to meet their need can inspire some extra effort on their behalf to maybe write you a review, or like this example from Chewy, the pet brand, to post something organically. These new parents posted about a really great customer experience that they had, tagging the brand, and then no doubt that increased their loyalty to the company. So this type of reciprocity can make a really positive impact, not just on a review and being able to collect a review, but on SEO and other aspects of your online presence. And this all just from throwing something in the mail that was a little extra. So you can do the same in your own business. One professional wrote that providing value, exceeding expectations, offering rewards, even just personalizing interactions or expressing gratitude, all of that goes to help build relationships and then encourage customers to continue their support of your business. And you can leverage all this goodwill through a few different channels. So there's things like review management that would allow you to better respond to customer support needs. At Local IQ, that looks like a product that allows you to be able to respond to comments on social posts. And this gives you a chance to work through customer support issues. Maybe you're collecting reviews, or maybe just being able to go above and beyond on comments that people are making on your social channels or just out on social platforms. And then listings management. This is another good opportunity that sort of plays into the reciprocity effect. You can promote your free trials, or you can showcase your positive reviews through your online listings. Next up is the mere exposure effect. And this just means that familiarity leads to preference, even if you don't realize it on a subconscious level. So the more exposure to your business, the more familiar the audience becomes with it, the more they trust it and engage with it, and then they prefer your brand over competitors. We want what's familiar, and the more we're exposed to it, the more familiar it becomes. So then you combine this with commitment and consistency, and then you've got yourself some really loyal customers. This is the basis for what's known as the full funnel marketing strategy. You can see that over there on the right. You want to ensure that your brand and your ads are in front of your prospects along every stage of their buying journey, as they make their way down the funnel, like we talked about earlier, from awareness that you even exist or that they have a problem, all the way down to the final sale and even beyond to customer loyalty. This is why brand awareness is so important. A really great strategy within a full funnel approach that was tailor-made for the mere exposure effect is display advertising. In fact, display ads have been shown to improve click-through and conversion rates on all other ads and campaigns that you're running at the same time. So hence, that's why we have something called a view-through conversion metric. So this is what happens when a user sees your ad. They don't click on it, but then they later return to your site, whether either through an organic search or through a direct ad or link. And this completes any sort of conversion action. That's what's considered a view-through conversion metric. And that's part of what display advertising can do and how it plays into that mere exposure effect. As they're working down the funnel, you can see all these different ad types that meet them through every single stage. And then digging into retargeting just a little bit more, it's hard to deny its effectiveness. Either through Google or Facebook, you can see several different types of retargeting ads through Facebook. This allows you to increase your CTR since your ads are showing to people who have already shown an interest or an intent. And we have research that says that combining retargeting with other types of advertising can increase your sales by 50%. Another way to get the effect of repeated exposure is to send the same message across all of your channels. So repeating your messaging and your unique value proposition across all your brand assets, including your website, blog posts, newsletters, ads, any other touch point, is a really easy way to reap the benefits of this principle. And as a prospect becomes more and more familiar with each of your unique values, the more appealing it becomes to do business with you. And this is why, again, including an array of channels and ad mediums in your content marketing strategy is so important. You can see this example. They carry the creative and the verbiage through multiple places on their homepage, on their LinkedIn ads, on Facebook, and it helps connect the dots for people and ups that exposure. Next, having a brand style, you wouldn't maybe think about it, but is part of the mere exposure effect. So while brand awareness measures how many people know about your brand, brand recognition measures how quickly a person can associate a piece of content that they see and hear with your brand. So to build brand recognition, you should have an appealing, eye-catching logo, as well as a brand style guide that sort of keeps everybody in line. So choose just a few colors and fonts to use consistently in your content so that people can build automatic associations between that look and feel and your business. So a great example of this is if you're just scrolling through your Instagram feed, for example. What makes you stop is if you see a brand that you're familiar with and you know that it's that brand because you recognize the colors, you recognize the image style, and these are things that you're not even really aware of. That's how you can stand out from all the noise. All right, then last up is a psychology tactic that you can apply to customers and your own team. So the Pygmalion effect says that if you or others believe something to be true of yourself, it will eventually become so, which is really just a fancy way of saying that positive expectations can create a positive outcome and vice versa. So, for example, if a teacher holds his or her students to really high standards with the belief that they are capable of meeting them, those students are way more likely to perform better. So then similarly, if you set high standards for your employees and your teams with enthusiasm, it can have the same effect. So you use this tactic to unify your teams and improve the customer experience. This is why identifying core values for your brand and then keeping those top of mind with your team is really, really important. This gives individuals a very clear set of expectations and qualities to strive for, and then they incorporate it into everything that they do. So the more positive feedback they receive, the more and more they will truly exemplify those values. And so this not only makes for a unified team, but then it also makes for a consistent and really extraordinary customer experience, which we talked about earlier can impact your conversions and your leads significantly. Another use that we talked about is how to foster trust from customers. So for example, a service that allows a customer to cancel a subscription at any time without a hassle or a penalty. That may seem counterintuitive to you as a business owner. But being able to do that and have that easy process can foster some trust and loyalty so that when that person is ready to come back, they're more likely to choose you because they had a really pleasant experience. You can also apply this tactic to create a positive feedback loop with your customers. So by conveying that a higher level of performance is attainable, there's a better version of themselves on the horizon, or that they can become the best in their field. You're encouraging them to act in a way that aligns with those beliefs. So those actions might start out by downloading your content or maybe just following you on social media. The more confidence that they have that they can achieve their goal with your help and that they're already on their way to doing it, the more likely they are to be a customer. Even better, as they achieve their goals over time, they can become loyal customers. All right, so I wasn't lying. I'm sure that this flew by, there was a ton of information. So let's sum it up if we had to in just 3 things. 1, start small. Knowledge is power. This was a ton of knowledge. But don't feel like you need to do everything at once. Test out 1 or 2 of these tactics and then measure the results. We say it all the time. Test and measure. Earn the trust of your audience. Again, this goes back to responsible use of psychology and marketing. Don't make promises you can't keep or represent more capabilities than you have. You're going to earn customers' trust, and then you'll earn a customer for a lifetime. And then finally, keep it simple. These tactics don't have to be broad, sweeping changes that you make immediately. Sometimes the most subtle changes make the biggest impacts. All right, so at this point, we're going to see a poll that comes up onto your screen, and we're going to transition into the Q&A section of our webinar, and that moves us into the audio only portion. So you have something on your screen. If you heard something today that was really interesting to you and you wanted to speak to an expert about it, or maybe you saw a tactic that you'd be interested to try, but you're just not really sure how to implement it, we have experts who can walk through a free assessment with you today. Look at your strategy and look for areas of opportunity and how you can do that. So if you want to go ahead and speak to someone, just click yes to that poll. What I would love for you to do at this point is, while people are getting situated and responding to the poll, if you have any questions from today, put those into the question box. It was a ton of information. There was a lot of stuff to go over. And again, if you weren't a psychology undergrad, sometimes it's hard to wrap your head around some of these principles. So if you have questions on anything that we talked about, how to implement any of these things, go ahead and put that into the question box now. Like I said, that poll is going to stay up on your screen for the duration of the webinar as we move into the audio only portion. So sort of sit back, relax. We're just going to be really laid back, take some questions. And if at any point you're like, you know what, I really would like to talk to someone and have them look at my strategy, just click yes to that poll. So I would love to get some questions into the question box. I see a lot of stuff coming in. So if you have a question, let's go ahead, let's take a look at what you want to get answered today and then how you can apply that. If something's maybe a little too specific, then I would really encourage you to answer yes to that poll, and then we can dive into your specific industry. All right, so I see a ton of stuff coming through. So let me go ahead and let's grab a couple and start answering. Okay, so I see something about posting on multiple platforms and content strategy and how you can spread out the content over a few days and few weeks. So this is a really great question because it can be really hard to create content, but we know from the mirror exposure effect, repeatedly being in someone's feed and getting that content out there is really important. So there's a couple of tips. One, if you go to wordstream.com, we have a template for social media specifically, and it'll help you create a content calendar for every month of the year. And you can divide it up into a special holiday post. It gives you post and content ideas, hashtags to use. So that's really helpful. One of the other tips I would give for that is, don't feel like you need to reinvent the wheel with every single post. If you are running a promotion, or maybe you have a theme, a topic theme that you want to cover in that particular time frame, you can take that same piece of content and splice and dice it a couple of different ways. Make it a reel, make it a static post. Maybe you record a quick video, change up the copy just a little bit. You know, this is where AI gets really helpful, because you can give a couple of prompts for variations of content ideas, and it'll give you different post ideas to put into social so you can spread that out. And then there's a lot of resources on our site on what types of content is appropriate for what type of channel and what type of medium. So you can just have at it. All right, that was a really good question. So let's see what we have. All right, I have a question around what's the best tactic to use for clients new to digital advertising. So that can be really overwhelming, especially if you are very well versed in digital advertising, but maybe you're not, and then you don't really know where to start. So there's a couple of different ways. It really depends on your industry and then your business's goals. If you are a new business and you're wanting to get exposure, you want people to know who you are, come to your store, come to your website, then you're really going to want a broad brand awareness campaign. You want to make sure that your online presence is secure. You want to make sure that you have a great website that can receive people. Display advertising can be wonderful, search ads. There's a lot of different facets that you can go with. And unfortunately, the answer is they're all great. It just depends on what your goals are and what your industry is. There's a ton of different channels. And so if you have a situation where you're a little newer to this and maybe it's a little overwhelming and you're not really sure where to start, that's a perfect example of when you can talk to one of our experts and they can do a free assessment for you, get a feel for what your business goals are. Our guys know all of these industries, and so they can dive into that and give some really good direction. All right, so let's see what else we have. I have time for just a couple of more questions. Let's see. All right, so I see some questions around the best way to market just based on verticals. So I would say one thing is to understand your benchmarks before you just jump in, because you want to make sure that whatever paid budget you put towards your ads, you want to make sure that you're performing along with industry averages. So we have some benchmarks on our site for search ads and Facebook ads. So you can, and it's broken out by industry. So you can get a feel for what the click-through rates are, what the conversion rates are. That'll help you set your goals for what sort of budget you want to put, and then what you want to get out of the campaigns. And then I would just say to look at your audience, look at where they are and how to best get your message out. Do you have, this specific question was around real estate. So do you have a house that you need to sell? Or maybe you have an open house that you want to promote or something along those lines. Your buyers based on the neighborhood, maybe they're on Facebook, maybe they're on Instagram more. So look at reels, maybe quick virtual walkthroughs, things like that can entice people. And then you always want to make it easy for people to be able to directly talk to you. Facebook and Instagram are great because not only do you have comments, but then there's also ad types that allow people to fill out a form. You can collect additional information and then follow up with them. But what I would really stress for all of that is whether it's your industry or your goals, every one of those tactics can be valuable. It's really just depending on what you want to accomplish in that moment, what your audience is, where you're located. That has a lot to do with it. And so all of those things come into play. So that's where it's really important to do your research, understand what your market is asking for. Maybe you look at some past performance of ads and see what went wrong, maybe what you did right, and then what you can do for the future. And if all of that feels a little too overwhelming, again, click yes to that poll, and then we'll be able to have someone discuss with you specifically around your industry and your specific goals for your business. All right, guys, so that was a lot to cover. I see a ton more questions coming in, but unfortunately, we are at the end of our time today. Thank you so much for joining. Again, this is recorded and will be sent to you later today. And if at any point you want to speak with one of our experts, you can get in touch with us through this poll or find us online. Thank you so much, and we will see you next webinar.